Let, tell me now, what are we doing in this process? Conduct procurements. In the planned procurement process, we have decided what all the item we want to go for tender, what all the item we want to go for quotation or proposal. Accordingly, we called for tender, proposal, and quotations. Now, multiple sellers have submitted the proposal. Now, in this process, we need to select the seller by analyzing their proposal, using our predefined selection criteria, which we decided in the last process, with a scoring system like past performance, how much score they achieved, financial capability, technical capability, project management capability, and so on. We put a scoring. We may have set the minimum score to be achieved by each seller. Say we have put 60% as a minimum score. Whoever achieving the minimum score, they stay in the race. Others will be eliminated from the process. Then you are calling for the sellers to come and make presentation. If presentation goes well, we may move into negotiation. Then upon negotiation, we will select a particular seller and award the contract to them. This is what the conduct procurement process. Let's look at the process. When I say conduct procurement process, in order to conduct the procurement, what I need in my hand? Of course, you need a scope management plan, requirement management plan, communications management plan, risk management plan. Already procurement management plan, you decided how are you going to conduct the procurement, which is already available. Configuration management plan, how we are going to control the changes to the project management results, cost baseline. Other documents we can utilize lessons learned register, project schedule, requirement documentation, risk register. We can utilize stakeholder register because many of the stakeholders have capability in analyzing the seller's proposals or quote or tender to see their suitability for our project. Procurement documentation, which is the key input. What's procurement documentation? We talk about request for tender, request for proposals, and so on. Sellers' proposals, their submissions that has to be analyzed, enterprise environmental factors, and organizational process assets. In the organizational process assets, we could take lessons learned from the past project while we are conducting the procurement, what are all the problems we have faced, why we face such a problems, what kind of action we have taken. So when you are, once we know what all the problem we could face during this process, we can take action to minimize such a problems or avoid such a problems. Look at the tools and techniques, very simple tools and techniques only. Bidder conferences, expert judgment, advertising, proposal evaluation, and interpersonal team skills like negotiation. What is bidder conferences? When we conduct the bidder conferences, before or after?
Before, when we have more than one people.
The sellers or after the selecting the sellers when we are conducting the bidder conferences? before. What is the purpose of the bidder conferences?
To select the efficient and capable guy.
Another name for the bidder conferences is we call it as pre-bid meetings. Pre-bid meetings. What is pre-bid meetings? Before the seller submits his tender or proposal, we want to, no, it is not before evaluating the seller. Before even they are making submission of the tender or proposal, we need to make sure they are having good understanding about the project. They are having good understanding about the project. If they have good understanding about the project, they will be able to come up with a good technical proposal. They will be able to come up with a reasonable pricing for the project. If they do not understand well, of course, they will not be able to give you a good proposal and they will not be able to give you reasonable cost also. Whenever the uncertainties they could see in the project, the cost goes up. So that's why we want to make sure we are explaining the procedure, explaining the key items of the project, including objectives to make sure the seller understands the project better. So that's called bidder conferences. Expert judgment, of course, when you are talking about conducting the procurement, like calling for tender, analyzing the tender, of course, it's not going to be done by the project manager alone. We need to use technical experts, cost experts, contract experts. We use multiple experts to analyze their proposals to see their suitability for our project. Advertising is one of the techniques commonly used for soliciting the tender or proposal. Proposal evaluation is the technique we're talking about analyzing the submissions with respect to our predefined selection criteria. We may even give them the percentage of components for each category of selection criteria, like size of the company, past performance information, past references from the project, technical capability, demonstrating the technical capability, demonstrating the project management capability, cost, time, all those factors we put there, and then we give the scoring for each item. And then whoever gets good score, then we will be taking to the next level of presentations and negotiation. Negotiation is one of the techniques. What's negotiation? What is the objective of negotiation? Basically, the objective of the negotiation is we want to obtain fair and reasonable price for both parties. Fair and reasonable price for both parties. Where we are negotiating price, negotiating the timeline, negotiating the technical aspects, negotiating the contractual aspect, contractual obligations, conditions, discussing about the risk management issues, all are part of the negotiation. So what is the result of the process? Selected sellers. And then we are signing the agreements between the buyer and seller. When you are doing this process, based on the selection of the actual selection of the sellers, we may end up at requesting changes to the various aspects of the project, which is treated as change request. Say, for example, in our original, when we are having the estimation for a particular package, we had, say, 50 million estimation, and we have estimated 1 year timeline. When we conduct the procurement process through competitive bidding process, where 6 sellers participated in the proposal. where finally the selected seller agreed to complete that package in 8 months, and his price was only 40 million. His price was only 40 million. Whereas we allowed for, in our budgeting process, we allowed 50 million for that package, 1 year timeline for that package. So what will happen now? So you need to go and make adjustment to the schedule baseline. You need to make adjustment to the cost baseline. You may need to make adjustment to the quality standards and methodology they propose, the process and procedure they want to use. All this adjustment will happen upon selection of the actual seller. That's what called as change request. Meaning you are proposing changes to the various plans based on the actual selection of the seller, which may require changes to the methodology, changes to technology, which end up at modifying the quality management plan, communication management plan, risk management strategy may change, procurement management plan may change, scope baseline, schedule baseline, cost baseline, lessons learned register can get updated, requirement documentation get updated, requirement traceability matrix may get updated, resource calendar gets updated. You see here, this resource calendar will become the final resource calendar. Here, when we award the contract to the sellers, they are bringing in the resources. That will be added into the resource calendar. That will become the final resource calendar. Risk register gets updated. Stakeholder register gets updated. Organizational processes are get updated. Generally, for assessing the seller's capability, using weighting system, you know. Generally, when you say agreements, contracts or agreements, subcontract, purchase order, memorandum of understanding, these are the different terminologies being used. So you are conducting 300 procurement items. So you have to do 300 times the procurement process. And you have to award 300 contracts. The contract is a mutually binding legal agreement that obligates the seller to provide the specified product, services, or results and obligates the buyer to compensate the seller. What do you need to have a legal contract? An offer, acceptance, consideration, something of value, not necessarily money, legal capacity, legal purpose. Agreements. In the agreement, generally, it contains procurement statement of work, which are major deliverables list, schedule or milestones and its date, performance reporting requirements, pricing and payment terms, inspection, quality and acceptance criteria, warranty and future product support, incentives and penalties, insurance and performance bond, subordinate or subcontractor approval, general terms and conditions of the contract, change request handling, termination clause and dispute resolution mechanism, all are part of the agreements. The next step is control procurement. What is control procurement? In this process, we are basically monitoring or managing the relationship of the procurement, which is between the buyer and seller, monitoring the contract performance to see whether both parties of the contract are fulfilling the contractual obligations defined in the contract agreement, making changes and corrections as appropriate, and closing out the contract is happening as part of this process. Before we had a separate process, close procurement. Now, in this edition, they remove that process, they put this under control procurement process itself. What is the benefit of this process? It ensures that the performance of both parties of the contract meets the contractual requirements. Control procurement process, which includes the application of the appropriate project management processes to the contractual relationships and integration of the output from these processes into the overall management of the project. Of course, while we are controlling the procurement, we also monitoring whether sellers are fulfilling the project plans, like fulfilling the baseline, schedule baseline, cost baseline, scope baseline, whether they are executing the work according to our plan. We need to see their performance in terms of fulfilling the baselines. Accordingly, we need to take necessary control action to improve the performance. This is all part of the control procurement process. So procurement activities may include collection of data, analyzing and reporting the procurement data, managing the procurement records, refinement of the procurement plans and schedules, monitoring the procurement and payment of invoices, all are part of the control procurement process. But the quality control of the procurement includes independence and credibility of the procurement audits, which is critical to the reliability of the procurement system. As a procurement audit, we need to periodically evaluate the efficiency of the procurement within the company. If the procurement processes are not being performed efficiently and effectively, you will not be able to get the efficient procurement. So the procurement audit plays a critical role in achieving the reliability of the procurement system. Look at the process, control procurements. So when I want to control the procurements, what I need? My project management plan components like requirement management plan, risk management plan, procurement management plan, change management plan, schedule baseline, other documents like assumption logs, lessons learned register, the lessons we learned until today in the project, milestone list, quality reports, requirement documentation, requirement traceability matrix, risk register, stakeholder register. Many stakeholders are good in the control procurement process. We can utilize them. Agreements we made with the sellers. Procurement documentation, which is request for tender, request for quotation. Approved change request. Where is this coming from? Approved change request. Where the approval of changes coming from?
From the management board.
I'm not hearing.
The board.
Sorry. Where is the approved change request is coming from?
Integrated
From the change control
control
board. Yeah, which process? Perform integrated change control. Why we need this? While we are monitoring the seller's performance, we also need to check whether the sellers are implementing the approved changes as approved. That's why we are, whether they are fulfilling the contractual modification made related to the approved changes also need to be verified. That's why we are taking as input. Work performance data. Here we are monitoring the seller's performance. Of course, we need work performance data from execution, enterprise environmental factors, and organizational process assets. Here we lessons learned from the past project can be considered, so that when we are facing certain issues in terms of managing the seller's performance, we know what action we can take to improve the seller performance based on our previous project experiences, which is available in the lessons learned documentation. Tools and techniques, expert judgment, claims administration, data analysis technique, performance review, earned value analysis. It will tell you where are we with respect to the schedule baseline and cost baseline achievement by considering the scope they are supposed to achieve. Trend analysis again being used. Inspections is the most commonly used technique. Audits, which is procurement audit basically. What is claims administration? That is claims. What is claims?
Now, son, this Taylor, remember that a friend of mine worked on her autopsy, right? They found out she was absolutely crap.
For example, buyer is made some changes and we have requested the seller to implement this change. Seller has submitted the response saying that we require 5 million additional cost. Let's say 1 month additional time. Seller is saying 5 million additional cost and 1 month additional time. Buyer is saying no, it will not cost you 5 million. You are unfairly asking for a amount for this change. So there is a dispute about the amount of compensation for a particular change, which is called disputed changes or claims. So how will you deal with it?
Sorry, I'm such a
How will you deal with it? So what we can do is a first step, we can call both parties, buyer and seller, try to negotiate to achieve a mix of mutually acceptable compensation for the change. If suppose one of the party is not accepting in the negotiation, what's the next step? The dispute continues. So the next step, we can go to the arbitrators. We can go to the arbitrators. Arbitrators are the third party professionals, those who are having technical, legal and contractual expertise, where they can call both parties, come and justify their claims or disputes, so that based on the documents, they analyze and they give the judgment. The judgment is legally binding, so both parties has to follow. If one of the party does not want to agree with the judgment of the arbitrators, then the other party can go to the court, can take legal action to implement the arbitrator's decision in the court. But of course, you know, going to the court is the last resort. You have to spend a lot of time and money in dealing with the court cases. So this is the claims administration. So the most important in the claim administration is during the execution, if you are seeing that things are not going in order, we need to try to avoid the claims, try to settle the issues as early as possible when it climbs up. So that is the best approach in terms of managing the claims. Performance review, of course, we are analyzing the performance with respect to the fulfillment of the methodology, technology, efficient implementation, implementation of project procedures and processes, reviewing the performance with respect to the scope, time, cost. All this comes under performance. So if you see the performance is not matching with our plan, you need to take necessary corrective action to improve the performance. End value analysis is used for that purpose. Trend analysis, when you see the performance, say first month is say delay. First month was 20 days delay, second month 1 month delay, third month 1.5 month delay. From there we can see where are we heading towards. Are they heading in a positive direction or heading in a negative direction? Accordingly, we should be able to come up with a necessary corrective action to improve the seller's performance. Inspections is the most commonly used technique. Audit. Audit is procurement audit. Basically, the audit helps us in identifying the gaps and shortcomings which are leading to the poor performance of the parties in terms of implementing the contract, or basically checking the efficiency of the procurement process. It's called audit process. Whenever I say audit, it's basically it helps us in see whether the process is being performed efficiently and effectively. So what is the result? One of the result is close procurement. So we are going through each and every conditions of the contract and closing the contract formally. Work performance information is the performance of the buyer and seller in fulfilling the project plans and meeting the contractual obligations. Procurement document update, our notices related to the contract, notices related to the performance, all are called procurement documentation. Our exchange of information with respect to the performance in fulfilling the contractual requirements. Organizational processes that updates, change request. So when the performance is not matching with our plan, so you are coming up with a necessary corrective action to improve the performance. That is treated as a change request. So you are proposing necessary corrective actions and preventive action to improve the performance of the parties involved in the contract. So which may end up at modifying risk management plan, procurement management plan. It may affect the schedule baseline and affect the cost baseline. So it all gets updated. Project document update like lessons learned gets updated. Resource requirements may get updated. Requirement traceability matrix may get updated. Risk register get updated. Stakeholder register gets updated. These are called, here we may even find new information about the stakeholders. Here, some of the stakeholders are having good experience in negotiation. So we may utilize them in negotiating the unsettled claim with the parties and sort out the claims which we have in our hand, so that we will not have any problems in the project. That's all part of this stakeholder register update. Claims called as contested changes. Contested changes mean disputes, claims, or appeals. This is a simple process.